Good morning, everybody. From the outset, first, I was told by Professor to introduce myself. Many of you may know me, but those who don't know me, I am Emmanuel Ajawin. I'm currently chairman of National Democratic Movement Patriotic Front, which is also a member of South Sudan Opposition Alliance. That is me. Yeah, but allow me to see this opportunity to express my profound gratitude and thanks to Professor Ahmed Al-Shahi and his team of the Middle East Center, St. Antony's College, for their invitation to this important and timely conference. It is timely because the National Republic of South Sudan is indeed at the crossroads. The country is facing economic meltdown and is on the verge of political collapse. Their humanitarian situation compounded by the prevailing floods across the country and the political quagmire of extension that has become the preferred tactics of the Juba regime to continue its grip on power. Therefore, it is imperative for South Sudanese and their regional and international friends to explore alternatives to save the country from the imminent disintegration. My topic, of course, is the government of technocrats as a solution for peace and stability in South Sudan. But before I go into the details, it is important for us first to comprehend the need of the government of technocrat. And to do that is to actually look at the first two agreements that have been signed. That is the first RCS and the second RCS, and why we are calling for a government of technocrats. Many of you know that the Republic of South Sudan attained its hard-won independence through a protracted struggle that was waged for centuries. First against the Turks invaders in 1820s, followed by the Anglo-Egyptian condominium rule, and finally, the successive regimes that rule the modern geographical space known today as the Sudan. The struggle of South Sudanese was for the noble cause and ideals of freedom, justice, dignity, and prosperity. That is why, on the 9th of July, South Sudanese, despite their political, religious, and tribal affiliations, welcomed the birth of their nation with fanfares and jubilation. Why was that? It was hoped that the independence will create a new political dispensation, tangible socio-economic development, service delivery, democracy, establishment of resilient institutions, and importantly, peace and stability. However, 2 years into the independence, the country was plunged into an infernal civil war by the SPLM political and military elites. People's expectations and hopes and dreams were shattered on that night of 15th of December, 2013. What started as a power struggle between the SPLM comrades turned into ethnic conflict and genocide, resulting in killing of thousands. Conservative estimate by the University of London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine puts those who have been killed from 2013 to 400,000. And it could be more than that. This is just a conservative estimate. And not only that, millions of our people have been displaced, moved to neighboring countries as refugees, and many of them are in the POCs, that is United Nations Protection of Civilian Sites, to provide safety, physical safety, from their own government. Is the irony of our country. So in a nutshell, the opportunity to build a vibrant economy and a strong democratic institutions based on the rule of law and accountability was unfortunately squandered. The country, which independence was watered with precious blood of its sons and daughters, became a tribal chieftaincy governed by incompetent and inept leadership who lacks energy and necessary political vision and charisma to unite and modernize the country into one of the democratic, stable, and economical powerhouse in Eastern Africa sub-region. Political and social unrest that was created by this man-made civil war in 2013 prompted IGAD and the international community to search for peace in the country. So after a protracted negotiations between the SPLM-IG and the SPLM-IO, an agreement was signed in August in 2015 in Addis Ababa. Of course, this agreement, to many of you, was known as the Resolution of Conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, abbreviated RCS, 2015. It is worth noting, of course, when the agreement was signed, that President Kiir refused to sign the agreement initially in Addis Ababa, and to the dismay of those at the ceremony, he signed it a week later in Juba with serious reservations. He uttered an infamous statement by President Jaffar Nimeri in early 1980s when he abrogated the 1972 Addis Ababa Peace Agreement. Nimeri said, and I quote that the Addis Ababa Agreement was neither a Holy Bible or Quran, meaning it cannot be abrogated. It is the same sentiment and a statement that was made by President Kiir. Coincidence of history, but again, it shows the lack of the political will many of the speakers before me alluded to. The agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan failed to bring a comprehensive peace agreement to the country due to lack of the political will and the irreconcilable political and personal differences. And that is clear in terms of the utterance and various statements that has been made by President Kiir and Dr. Riek. You could see that the two gentlemen, do not want to work together. And Kiir always say that I don't want to work with Riek. And that's why up to now, 6 years after the agreement was signed in 2018, there's nothing to be achieved or to talk about in terms of tangible results of the agreement. The agreement failed to holistically first address the fundamental political and social economic contradictions that emerged as a result of the conflict. President Kiir denounced the agreement as a foreign impose and created obstacles to water down the provisions of the agreement. And indeed, in 2015, barely 2 months after the RCS was signed, he single-handedly established 22 states through the infamous Executive Order 36/2015. Furthermore, he refused to withdraw his troops from Juba, as is specified by the agreement. These troops were later on instrumental in what was known as J1 dogfight that resulted in the uprooting of the SPLM-IO forces and the vice president from Juba. The total collapse and the demise of the RCS 2015 led to a continuation of war in the country, and another peace negotiations mediated by IGAD in Addis Ababa was initialed and signed in Khartoum. South Sudan has witnessed a sprouting of various revolutionary movements waging war against the regime. It was no longer SPLM-IG and SPLM-IO. And indeed, in September 2018, an agreement was signed and it became known as revitalized RCS. So literally, rather than accepting that first RCS has failed, they actually renew it again and they call it, they're revitalizing the agreement. And this is what you have now. The agreement, of course, is known to you, created a bloated government, although a member of the NDM negotiating team in Addis negotiating this peace agreement. Many of us in the opposition, we propose, as Dr. Lam alluded to earlier, for having a lean government, because we're saying the resources in the country are quite limited. People need service delivery in terms of hospitals and school and so forth. This, of course, went to the deaf ears. We ended up having a government that consists of almost 550 MPs. 550 MPs in a population of 10 million. United States is a population, I think, of 300 million. It has not more than 300 members of, I think, Senate and Congress. But in South Sudan, you had 550 MPs. It tells you that it's actually, the agreement was meant for power sharing and was agreement of convenience. not to address the root cause of the conflict that was alluded to by Dr. Before I came here to the podium. And even in terms of the hazardous and safety, the Juba Parliament that was constructed after the Addis Ababa peace agreement was supposed to contain, I think, inside sitting is not more than 170. So I don't know how they're sitting 550, MPs in it. Nevertheless, to make the matter worse, they also appointed 5 vice presidents. And if you look at the duties of these vice presidents, is to supervise clusters. You have economic cluster, social cluster. So what they're doing, they're duplicating the work of the ministries. And they meet, I think, every fortnight, and they have all the privileges, the V8s and the salaries that they have for jobs that a minister can do. So you have today in Juba. South Sudan has seen an endless transitions. I think Dr. Lam spoke earlier about it. So if you start from 2005, we have been living in a constant transition. Together, in South Sudan alone is 15 years, plus 6 years again is almost 21 years. By the time it comes to end in 2026, the first transition was 2005, 2011, 2011 to 2015, 2015 to 2018, again 2018 to 2022, 2022, 2024, where we are in now. From 2024 now, they're telling us it's 2026, they will go for elections. And we know there'll be no more elections. Again, we'll go for transition. So you could see it becomes a vicious circle. But this is intended because this is the elected leaders in South Sudan. They have decided to hold the country hostage. And they have the scary tactics of telling us, look, what options do you have? We only have 2 options. Either we go for square one, and square one is really terrible for you guys, it's war. Or, you renew our terms. We continue. So they'll say, okay, let's have another extension. So they've been going on for too long. Now, the question is, what can we do differently this time that these transitions and endless extensions comes to an end? Given the fact that there's a lack of political will in the country, there's no trust between the politicians. And that from 2011 to date, the country's affairs has been run by the various political groups, especially the SPLM. It is clear that any peace agreement, even us in opposition now, we are not part of Tumaini, but let's say we negotiate and we go back to the bilateral negotiations with the regime. Achieving, if we sign an agreement, will be another power sharing, you see. So it becomes the elites continuing ruling the country, for forever. So we are saying we have to try a different method. And that is why we say that we need to first have a roundtable conference as the first mechanism. Why roundtable conference? We feel that bilateral peace negotiations does not really lead to an inclusive participation of all the citizens of South Sudan. The country now and the government in South Sudan is not a de jure government. It is a de facto government. And therefore, it lacks the mandate of the people. So to resolve this, we need to call for a roundtable conference. And this roundtable conference, it is envisaged that all the political forces in the country, the civil society, women, youth, faith-based organizations should participate in determining the political destiny of the Republic of South Sudan. Now, if this is done, we expect the roundtable conference will resolve in creating, of course, a government of technocrats. Why the government of technocrats? We feel that the agenda or the issues that need to be implemented during the interim period, it doesn't need to be implemented by the politicians because they lack the will, the political will and the trust. So if you give it to technocrats who, for a period, let's say an interim period of 3 to 4 years, to implement an agreed agenda, we feel at least South Sudan could have a respite from the civil war and also from this continuation of the extension. Now, the task and the duty of the government of technocrat will be to draft a permanent constitution. And I think the speakers earlier spoke about the need of having a permanent constitution. We in the opposition, especially in Soma, we believe that a constitution, it is a social contract between the government and the people. And it comes down to that the constitution writing must start by the consultation, consultations first, and of the people from the grassroots. You start, then you come up with the constitutional conference. And then after that, you end up with a referendum on the constitution. So at the end of the day, you start with the people and you end with the people, because it is people constitution. It is the law that will govern the country, and their participation is important. Now we are hearing, and this has been our differences with the government in the last round talks of in Rome. The government was saying that the constitution making process should start with the constitutional conference. We told them, no, it doesn't start constitutional conference. It must start with popular consultations in the regions. They also refuse for it to be a referendum on the constitution. And we said that cannot be fair, because it is the people that need to decide whether it is a covenant that they would like to see themselves in. So one of the tasks of the government of technocrats will be to draft a permanent constitution for the country. Another one is the establishment of the new army and the national security sector. The national security now you have in the country is completely politicized. You don't have a national army, you don't have a national security. All these are SPLM branches of the ruling party. I can give an example. For example, Dr. Bulmel, he's a deputy secretary general of the SPLM, and is also a general in the national security. You have the ex-director of the national security, Akolkor. When he signed the agreement with those of Kitgwang and those of Johnson Olany and Gerwich in Khartoum, he signed as an SPLM member. So you could see that most members of the SPLM political party, they're also members whether of the SSPDF, now they call it, or national security. So you could see the influence of the SPLM political party in terms of how they're controlling the national security and the army. And in such a condition, sorry, you cannot go for elections, because now you hear people talking about elections without addressing these fundamental issues. And also the issue of having federalism, the issues of having population census, repatriation and rehabilitation of the internally and displaced and refugees to return back home. These are programs, inter alia, of course, among other programs that we will have for the government of technocrats to implement. This does not need politicians to implement. It can be implemented by the technocrats, so that we could avoid the issue of the trust and the will that has been an obstacle for South Sudan to have a sustainable peace and stability. I don't know how long do I? Yeah, so about 10 minutes. I still have 5 to 10 minutes, or okay, that's good. I was rushing through it, so I was thinking, okay, so I'll take my time. So when I'll look at the agenda or the issues which I said the inter alia to be the program to be implemented, I talked about the constitution and the importance of it. I also talk about the issue of national army, because a national army should be a mirror for the people of South Sudan, where all our diversity, we must see ourselves into it. Now, what we have, as I said earlier, it is SPLM dominated. This is also tribally representative. It does not enjoy the diversity of the people of South Sudan. So there's a need to have a new national that will have the trust and the confidence of the people of South Sudan. Now, federalism. We in Soma, we believe that the centralized or decentralized system of governance that you have in the country is not really good for South Sudan. It has proven to be a failure. You see now in Juba, all the resources that are produced in the states are all taken to the capital. And the states are left, without any funds for them to have the development that is necessary. So we believe that there's a need to have a federal system that gives autonomy in terms of the economical autonomy, in terms of the judicial autonomy to the states. This is important so that we stop the migration that you have now from the villages to towns. Most people are moving from Juba, from the countryside to Juba. Why? Because Juba has everything. If you want a good hospital, you go to Juba, although that's subjective. You want education, you go to Juba. You want employment, you go to Juba. And this, in my the mistakes that we made during the former Sudan. The former Sudan was a heavily centralized state. And Khartoum became almost a small Sudan. If you want a birth certificate, you go to Khartoum. You want to go to a good university in Khartoum. You want a job, you go to health, you go to Khartoum. So the Frifris have been marginalized. And this is what created, the anger, and the reaction in the countryside. And that's why in southern Sudan at that time, people rebelled, Nuba Mountains and Darfur. So it led to a total marginalization of the Frifris. South Sudan is doing the same. Everything is in Juba. You go outside, Juba is just people are still as they are, as if there's no independence yet in South Sudan. So there's a need to have a strong federal system. The same thing with the judiciary, that you have to give powers to the state. Although they will have their own constitutions, it should be in conformity, of course, to the permanent constitution. Again, you give them the power in terms of the security, the police, and so forth. Let it be federal. The money. We believe that the revenue generated in the states, 70% at least, should stay in the state, because what you need in Juba is only having a coordination role. So therefore, there's no need to take the resources from the states and take 80% to Juba. Juba will only have, let's say, a seat of the government. You'll be paying the MPs, the ministers, maybe like Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Defense. But the resources should remain in the states so that the states could develop. And we say that within this federal system that we envisage as the opposition, there's a need to create a trust fund so that the states that are not producing or they don't have capacity, to generate revenues for their own delivery of services. This trust fund, each and every state should contribute a certain percentage according to their income, so that if there's any state lagging behind, you could actually, apply for grant for them to be helped. So literally, we believe now what we need in South Sudan to get out of this vicious and circle of extension is to have a government of technocrats and to give the government to the non-politicians. And we, the political forces and the politicians, we wait after the interim period of 3 years, we prepare ourselves for the elections and create a conducive democratic atmosphere so that everybody can participate and we could have a genuine elections. With that, Professor, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Emmanuel. Very comprehensive and interesting analysis. I will comment on it later.